Two great Queenslanders join us for Better Call Paul right now, the former Queensland Premier Campbell Newman and the current LNP Senator, none other than James McGrath. Lads, hello, good evening. Of course, we have to pretend you're not in the same room, but they are. How's Brisbane tonight, James?
Brisbane's brilliant, and I'm all for the better because Campbell is right beside me.
Now, I know it's the Story Bridge,
himself.
but I say this to sort of the technical people here. Can we have a look at the two shot again, of the two lads? That looks like you guys have a roller coaster behind you at SeaWorld. It's the Story Bridge, but it looks like the roller coaster at SeaWorld is currently behind you. The play said it all the way through, great at politics. They won that last election, right? Still bruises. But their plan was scare everyone with the lockdowns, ruin the local economy, then pretend it's Canberra's fault. The game now is in the next 18 months between now and whenever the federal election is, which is about, May, I think it's got to happen by next year, that everything to do with the economy is the federal government's fault. And if this fight was to be adjudicated, it'll be the federal government's fault. Put simply, are you hearing on the ground people starting to parrot back the message of the Premier that somehow it's, despite the fact that you had JobKeeper, the removal of JobKeeper and everything to do with an unemployment rate that's above national average before JobKeeper starts to taper off, is somehow the federal government's fault? Is the politics working?
Not in terms of attacking the federal government. The federal government is seen as getting the credit for saving the economy, especially when you look around the world compared to how those countries have done. Australia has done quite well. We're still in tough times. We're still going to get out of these tough times. But the mob are giving credit to Scott Morrison and his government for those decisions they made to support businesses through coronavirus. I agree with you 100%. The playbook from Labor for the next 12 months, and the next federal election will be held between August 21 and May 14. The playbook from Labor is for everything that goes wrong in Queensland, from the Premier getting a cold cup of tea to whatever happens with the unemployment rate, is that it is Scott Morrison's fault. Now, it's simply not true, but it's up to myself and my other colleagues in Queensland at a state and federal level to make sure we hold the Premier and her government to account. And going back to Stephen Miles, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with delinquents who are running the economy here. Delinquents who think that as a Deputy Premier, it is an act of statesmanlike behaviour to put an invoice through a shredder when it was part of an agreement between premiers at a national cabinet meeting just under 12 months ago. I mean, these people are not serious about governing, but they are serious about playing games.
I hope I've articulated for the audience for many a night, firstly on eggshells and then straight down the barrel, about the game that's been played here. If we don't have a process that complainant goes to police, if police want to take it further, they take it to the Department of Public Prosecutions, then it's a court, and then that's where we go. Anything else is mob justice.
Anything else is the law of the jungle. And what we saw yesterday with that press conference was a clear expression of the lack of knowledge of journalists of basic legal principles, the failure to understand the separation of powers, and the failure to understand the presumption of innocence. I'll repeat that. A failure to understand the presumption of innocence. These are legal principles that have not come out in the last week. They have been built upon with centuries of legal thought. This is the basis of our legal system. And what we saw yesterday, which I can only describe it as a lynch mob of journalists who didn't understand the law, but wanted to, and one journalist talked about the court of public opinion. Mm-hmm. Well, the last time that I looked up the court structure in Australia, there wasn't a court of public opinion. We had Supreme Courts, federal courts and high courts. We don't have a court of public opinion. And this sets, the worrying thing for anyone in Australia is the precedent that can be set that any person is found guilty on the basis of an accusation rather than going through the criminal law process which you've just outlined. And I was actually sickened yesterday listening to that press conference. I was driving back from Gundawindi, and how those journalists treated, let's put it aside, there was the Attorney General, let's put it, the fact that he was a human being standing there, and how they treated that particular person. We have a criminal law process. The criminal law process should be followed. And I'll end on this. The issues you're dealing with in relation to sexual assault and other violent sexual crimes are so serious, they should be treated soberly and sensibly through the legal process. They should not be allowed to be used in such a political manner by the Labor Party and by the Greens and by the media. Paul, I agree with Campbell. We've got to defend Christian, because we're actually not defending him, the person, in a way. We're defending the process. Absolutely. Here. We're defending the rule of law. And as broad church conservatives, you know, one of our founding principles is the rule of law, and that is under attack by the media at the moment.
I'm with you. Your winner or loser of the week?
Oh, the loser of the week is pretty simple. Mainstream media in Australia. They've done themselves irreparable damage with their disgraceful behaviour at that press conference yesterday, and their general treatment of sexual assaults over the recent weeks.